Hello, cozy detectives, and welcome to the Blanket Fort Files. I'm Larissa,
And I'm Joy.
and we're here to report on all things comfy and cozy. Uh, I'm really excited. I don't want to say what our topic is, although I'm doing it. But this is one that I'm for sure looking forward to. And I feel like this summer we've been really reveling in that childhood, early teenage nostalgia. And it just is bringing me a lot of joy.
Yes, for sure. I feel like even so, we recently posted our little selves on Instagram, and not until that moment. So, previously on this, a 2% cozy of mine has been the Steam Deck that I got, and I got little bear toggles for them.
Mhm.
And then in that photo, I had bears. And then I went to grab my coffee cup this morning and I had bears. And I'm like, I guess I just see bears as cozy and they've been with me for way longer than I thought. Like, I wouldn't have considered
Yeah.
myself a bear girly, but now I'm like, I think I am.
Yeah.
I think
They're
that's
just so
deserved.
cute and cuddly. And
Yeah.
we were talking about this last night with the teddy bears, and definitely might be a theme in an upcoming episode.
Yes, and you have the cutest bear from your history. Wonderful. I loved it. I
Yeah.
almost made it my phone background because I was like, that's how cute. I
I love
was
that.
like, I don't want to be creepy though. So
No,
like,
I wouldn't think it's creepy, but
oh,
yes, I still have my teddy bear from when I was a wee little girl, like about 1 years old, and
so
his name is
sweet.
Bobo. He's a little white teddy bear.
So cute. I still have a lion from The Lion King, and it was the first thing I ever bought with my own money. I don't know how my
Cute.
brain remembers that, but I just remember it being like this super, I mean, still is, the super treasured thing that I bought for myself. And I was so excited and I felt so adult. And if the house burns down, my lion is in the safe. So he is safe.
That's so sweet. I love that. That's so funny. That memory kind of unlocked a memory for myself. Also, Lion King being like the first of something for me. So that was the first movie I saw in theaters as a kid,
Oh.
but I threw up in the theater.
Oh no. Wait, why? You just
I
were so
don't
excited. Were you
I
eating
don't
all
know.
the food or something?
No, I think I was just sick. I don't actually remember getting sick. I just remember like my mom telling me years later.
Oh.
And then when the second Lion King came out, when I think it was one that went straight to VHS, my parents got it for me when I had the chicken pox. So
Oh.
I still to this day have not seen Lion King one and a half because I was like, the other two I was so sick for. I don't want to see this other one.
Oh, I love Lion King 1.5. I feel like
Yeah.
it's so funny. Maybe I'm remembering it incorrectly, but I have a lot of good memories of it. And I remember them doing bloopers
Oh, cute.
where at the end they would pretend to mess up the lines. I feel like they did that in Toy Story 2 as well.
Maybe.
So I feel like maybe
Hmm.
I was just that time period in that vibe. I also I'm gonna look up on my computer real quick because I'm pretty sure that the first movie I saw in theaters, my grandma took me to in theaters. Okay. So, okay. I think this is real. I have a vague memory of seeing a Barney movie in theaters.
Oh,
Did Barney go
iconic.
to theaters?
Maybe. I actually got to meet Barney as a kid. I
Stop.
wasn't
I'm
ever
so
on
excited.
it, except I had this I wouldn't say it's a weird fear. I feel like this is a very rational fear,
Uh-huh.
but things that were really big and abnormally not the correct size or the normal size, I would be
Yes.
terrified of. So
Yes.
it was there's a picture of me and Barney and BJ and Baby Bop, all three, and I'm this
Whoa.
tiny child, and they're massive, and I was
I
this
really
is
don't like
actually
it.
really terrifying. And then one time we went on a family trip, I think to South Dakota to do the whole Mount Rushmore theme.
Mm.
And outside of our hotel was this giant buffalo statue. And my parents wanted me to take a picture in it, but I was so terrified that the statue was going to come alive while I was standing under it. So in the picture, I'm covering my ears, and like I have
Oh.
one foot up, like ready to run in case the buffalo came to life.
Oh, I totally get that. I was also afraid of the Santas at the mall because,
Oh, yeah.
you're not Santa. What is happening?
Right. And they're just kind of creepy old men. Like, not to hate on mall
Yeah.
Santas, but they just give a weird vibe.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is sometimes it's like really sweet and they create like the whole environment nowadays. But I feel like when we were kids, it was just like one guy in a chair. It was like, come
Right.
meet Santa. And I was like, I really don't want to. Let's not, dude. But I
Yeah.
just looked it up and apparently Barney's Great Adventure came out in 1998. So I think
Mm.
I haven't remembered that in forever. But when you said the first movie you saw, I was like, I feel like it was Barney
that
somehow. I didn't
that
even
would
know
make
Barney went to
sense.
theaters, but I just
Yeah.
remember my grandma and then like Barney somehow on the screen.
Yeah.
But oh, so
So
funny.
that's so great. Um, we're just doing all kinds of memory unlocks. This
Do
isn't
it.
really like an old memory, but I don't know if you've started Parenthood yet because I
I
know.
haven't.
Okay.
I know. I need
Well,
to.
there is like a Christmassy episode, and
Mm.
Lauren Graham has to work as an elf for a mall Santa.
Oh my gosh. Yes. That's hilarious. I love that.
Yeah.
That also, yeah, there's a lot of those in TV shows. Psych has that. I want to say, does New Girl have that? Maybe not. Maybe I'm remembering that incorrectly. But I feel like that would be a good bit for
Maybe,
New Girl where they're
for
like,
sure.
it's like Nick versus the like mall Santa.
Yeah,
That would be such a good episode. And then
it would.
Schmidt's just like trying to like schmooze the mall Santa or something like that.
Yes, with some like business idea.
Yeah.
Maybe this
Like
is
they
an episode.
expand.
That'd be really embarrassing if we're like describing an actual episode and all the cozy detectives are like, "What are you
You're
talking
like,
about?
duh,
This
it's
did
season 3.
happen."
Yeah. Well, at least it'd be on
um,
brand.
yeah. So other than that, we haven't really chatted about how you've been this week. I know we, in our world, we recorded just a few days ago, but how have you been since then?
It's been good. It's once again, we are filming this like summer time-ish and it feels like it, which is nice. But again, looking at little Joy, realizing how tan she was, I literally was like, ugh, I look like I was it Family Guy or something like that. It's like you're haunting this house with your whiteness. I'm like, that's me right now. I'm so white. So
Um,
I need to be outside and get sun. I feel like that's the biggest thing. And ooh, a hot tip, hot take I got from Instagram. So maybe this is actually, this absolutely is not health advice, but I saw somebody talk about how it's really good for your eyes because I've been doing a lot of computer work this week. It's really good
mhm.
for your eyes if you are sitting, if you happen to be sitting near a window, you focus as far out as you can, and then you hold like your hand or something right here, and then you focus on your hand, and then you rapid focus to the farthest, and then you focus back on your hand, and it just
Hmm.
kind of relaxes your eyes. So I've been doing that this week, and I actually feel like it's helping. I don't know if it's a placebo effect or a real thing, but the Instagram person
Yeah.
seemed very confident in what they said. So I tried it, and I felt like it helped because I just the blue light messes with me so much.
Yeah, I keep my computer like 100% of the time on like a night mode. So it like
Mm,
it does, you can like change the intensity. So I keep it pretty red. So that, and it's
that's
not like a
smart.
harsh red, it's like a very soft, like yellowy. And then not all of the time on my phone, but like
Mm,
if I'm on it, basically like I would say probably like 8 p.m. after, I have like a similar setting on my phone. Like it's not just a general night mode, but it's like an extra
yeah.
layer because yeah, that same thing, that blue light is just like really, really harsh on
Hmm.
your eyes, kind of in the same way that we talked about in that first episode with the warm light and the
Yep.
LEDs, which
Yep.
I actually have a little side story about that. So I think I mentioned this in a couple episodes ago where I was kind of doing like a little bit of a decor redo.
Hmm.
And so which side note to the side story, I found this really pretty, it was on Amazon, but you got me looking at Tiffany style lamps with the one that you got.
I love
And
them.
there's this pink one that is just so, so pretty, but it was like over $200. And I'm like, oh,
I don't
I
know why they're
need
so
to
expensive.
like, I know. I was like, I do want to get this eventually, but this needs to be like a save up 4 piece. But my sister was like, oh, we need to get like light pink light bulbs. And I'm like, ooh,
Ooh.
I would love that because we're doing this little like pink kind of coquette vibe. But every light bulb that I looked into was like a bright hot pink LED that would just like turn your entire room
Mm.
like neon pink. And that we're looking for very soft. So
Yeah.
I was doing some hard hitting investigating into light bulbs. And apparently, I did not know this. I don't know if you knew this, but last year they actually made it illegal for manufacturers to make and sell those like old, like halogen, iridescent,
Oh,
or incandescent light bulbs.
really? I definitely did not know that.
Yeah, so I managed to find, so General Electric used to make these soft pink light bulbs, and it's not like a very like it's not obviously pink, it's just like a very very soft white into like a pinkish like hue. And I found a couple on Etsy that were reasonably
Oh,
priced. I just love the like ambiance that it gives.
absolutely.
But now I don't know what I'm going to do when these burn out because
Oh
I'm like, they
no.
don't make these anymore. It's just people who have a bunch that they resell them. And
That's
I did
wild.
find I did find really affordable ones on Etsy, but I've seen people selling them for over $100 for one.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And plus that's terrifying to ship too. Because what if I spend $100
Yeah.
and I get it and I'm just getting glass?
It's been
Like,
shattered. Yeah.
ooh.
This The seller luckily did put it was like in the original packaging, but they stuffed like packing peanuts in it and then also wrapped it in bubble
Smart.
wrap. So it felt very secure. But I had that same thought of you're shipping me
Yeah.
light bulbs. These are some of the most fragile
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't
Ooh, you
know.
also should share a photo too, because I'd love to see that pink light.
Yeah.
I've never seen that. It's definitely something that I remember from my childhood wanting, but I don't think I ever got. So I feel like a fun
Same.
colored light bulb, especially with the croquette vibe, I feel like that's gonna be so pretty.
Yeah. And it again, it's not very obviously pink, but it's so much
Yeah.
better
Soft.
than yeah, it's very soft. And I feel like because while I do love a good warmish yellowy light, I don't want yellow all the time. So this is a nice
Yeah.
option.
Alternative. Yeah. I like that a lot. I will keep an eye out for you if I'm at a thrift and I see another lamp. I'll definitely let you know.
Please do. I'm gonna like
Yeah.
send you my thrift wish
You're-
list because I was
yeah.
actually talking about this. I don't know if it's just in the area that I live, but we just don't have
Mm,
we don't have a lot of thrift stores in general, but the ones that we do just don't have a lot of good stuff. So maybe I need
yeah.
to drive out a little bit and find better ones, but I'll send you a wish list for sure to keep an eye out.
Yeah, please seriously do. I have to drive a little bit too. I probably have to drive close to an hour to get to
Oh,
the good
wow.
thrifting stores,
Hmm.
but for me, it feels worth it. I really like the hunt of things, and especially like I think I got the lamp that we're talking about, the Tiffany lamp for like $20 maybe,
Oh,
something like
wow. What
that.
a steal.
So I know. So I feel like it's worth it for sure with things like that, especially because it's like more
Absolutely.
unique. And now I gotta look
Hmm.
out for light bulbs for you too.
I know. Who would have thought? So,
Who would have
do
thought?
we want to dive into our theme
Mhm.
this week? And
Yes.
it's kind of a good transition, I feel, of talking about pink and pink light bulbs to a very pink book.
Yay!
So, Joy and I are talking today about The Princess Diaries. It is a beloved series for both of us. Do you have any memories associated with Princess Diaries growing up?
The book I remember buying on a family vacation. We drove for like all family vacations, and I remember buying it and trying to read it in the car. But the main memory I have is the movies.
For
So
sure.
we'll kind of be dividing and conquering with this, where Larissa will be talking more about the books and I'll be talking more about the movies. And then we're going to kind of compare and contrast. I think in order to give somewhat justice to the subject, there will be some spoilers for sure
Hmm.
about both the book and the movies, just so that you're aware if you happen to not have watched either or read any of the books, because there are some major differences.
Hmm.
And I think my main memory is just sitting down and watching the movie and loving it and having it be one of those rewatches. I feel like I'm a very early 2000s vibes media person in general. So I just rewatched it all the time. I even remember the first time I watched it because I feel like it's just like ingrained in me.
No,
What about
same.
you?
I no, same for sure. I definitely grew up with both the books and the movies, and I'll talk about the obviously the books a lot more in depth because that's my case file. But I read through all of them quite a few times, at least the first
Mm.
few. But yeah, with the movies, I would say that one and probably Parent Trap are the two that I
Mm.
just would cycle through all the time. Like I had one friend growing up that we would do a lot of sleepovers, and almost every time we had a
Cute.
sleepover, we would watch Princess Diaries. So,
Aw, that's so fun.
and I feel like that's a movie still that, even though it's technically a kids movie, it's hold up really well, and I
Yes.
feel that it's very beloved with adults even now. Like I see it all over TikTok and Instagram, like people talking
Yeah.
about it, recreating it, doing
Mhm.
parties, which the timing of this, I'm actually going to a Princess
Yay.
Diaries birthday party tonight. So very excited for that. And by the time this episode comes out, I will share this, but I am making, or I'm already made for the party, the sorbet from
Oh,
the state dinner.
it looks so good. I got a sneak preview
You
photo.
did. But I will be sharing the recipe. So if anyone would like to recreate it for themselves, they'll be able to.
Yes. Yes. Oh my word. It looked so yummy. What did you use to make it the green color?
Just food coloring.
Oh, because it looks so
Yeah,
vibrant. I was like, oh,
yeah.
that's like spot on.
It definitely took a little like trial and error because
Mm.
I didn't want to add too much and then it gets a little wackadoodle, but
Mhm.
it was too subtle. And I watched that clip and it's like a very vibrant green.
Mhm.
Um, and it's technically just a mint sorbet, but I also made mine with pears, which I've seen a few people that have also
Oh.
recreated it online did, just because pears are obviously a staple from
Yes.
Genovia. So
Yes, yes. And I that's actually a question that I have for you. So I'm really excited to get into the books because there's a lot of things in doing the behind the scenes research on the movies that I don't know if it fully pulls over to the book. So I've only read about probably halfway to three-fourths of the first book. I was trying to refresh my memory of it, but I didn't quite get all the way through it before we filmed. So I am excited to hear.
yeah, I am definitely excited to get into the books as well. Like I said, this is something that I read a lot growing up, doing a little bit of behind the scenes, but they are a 12 book series, excuse me, written by Meg Cabbot. There are also 4 novellas that are essentially, so each book is like volume 1, volume 2, and
Mm.
then there's 4 novellas that are like volume 3.5 or volume like 7 3/4.
Oh wow, I did not know that.
So they're like little mini versions. So sometimes they will like catch you up on a smaller plot that's happening
Oh.
in between books, or there'll be like a separate story altogether. And then there's also 4 themed novellas outside of the halves that are kind of more like guides. So there's one called The Holiday Princess. So it's like basically how to like celebrate like Christmas as a royal, basically, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's kind of cute. Is it all Genovia based, or are the novellas outside of it more like overall princess things, including real life?
It's very heavy on like Mia and
Okay,
Genovia, and I haven't
that's what I
read
would
any of
think.
those. Yeah, I haven't read any of those since I was a kid, so I may also be misremembering a little bit, but from what I remember, it was kind of like a how-to guide.
Gotcha.
Um, but for anyone, if you're like, I don't care about spoilers, if you don't know anything about Princess Diaries, you're just here for the vibes. The story is about Mia Thermopolis, who in the first book finds out that she is the regent princess of Genovia, which is a fictional principality in Europe.
Hmm.
And the book is set up quite literally as diary entries. So they're dated. It's just Mia writing down her thoughts, and she'll have other things written down like homework assignments.
Yeah.
She very much struggles with algebra, so she'll have algebra notes in there, which I think I really loved as a kid because I was always really bad at keeping a journal or a diary. So I really enjoyed reading someone else's, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it was really cool too. So Anne Hathaway plays Mia in the movies, and she reads the audiobook for the book that I
Oh,
was
I
like
didn't know
listening to.
that.
Yeah, it was really cool, and I think she did it very, very well. One, she actually did a lot of the accents very well because like there's like a Genovian feel accent.
Oh, I
But
love
then
that.
two, I felt like it would be very hard to pull off, but she did with reading out loud the math at the bottom because she does. She'll like read the whole entry and then she'll read the math problem at the bottom if there's one of them. And I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, okay." Like I feel like she's really pulling that off. So, that's
Oh,
cool.
I really love, I don't think I knew that she did the audiobooks for that. So I definitely want to go and listen to those.
Mhm.
Because last summer, I reread the first and second one, which I already showed the first one, but this what the second one looks like.
Oh, I don't know if I've seen that. I don't know if I knew it was blue.
Yeah, so they're each kind of their own color. I have the first four here.
Mm.
This is the third one. They're all like a
Oh,
color with
pink
a crown on it. It's not, it's kind of a
like
pinkish
reddish.
red.
Hmm.
Yes, but it definitely reads more red on camera. And compared to the other one, like
Oh, yeah, you're
you
right.
kind of see, but it's definitely a pinky red. And then the fourth one is purple.
Hmm. Pretty.
So but yeah, so she finds out in the first one that she is the princess, and this is going to get into that spoiler territory that
Yeah.
Joy talked about. And again, we'll do our comparison of the books and movies towards the end, but it's kind of hard not to talk about this and still talk about the books. But Mia's dad is actually still alive in the books. They kill
Wild.
they kill him off in the movies. I'm not entirely sure why that
Ooh, I know
was the
I know
show.
why.
Oh, you do? Ooh,
Mhm.
you can go ahead and tell me it because I'm very curious to know.
So, so for the grandma is also alive in both of them,
Hmm.
but when they cast Julie Andrews as the grandma in the movies, because of who she is, they wanted to give her a larger part. And so in order
Hmm.
to do that, they ended up giving her a lot of the lines of the dad. So it kind of made more sense in working through it to have the dad be no longer there and then the grandma be kind of that figure that like because like in the books it's the dad that tells her she's the princess, whereas in the movies it's the grandma that tells her she's the princess, and a lot of things like that. And it's interesting because in the research that I looked up, Meg Cabot didn't really have, I don't think, any connection with the movies. Like she saw the
Hmm.
movie in theaters for the first time is what the phrasing was on the behind the scenes I was looking up.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because I feel like they both actually stand pretty well as like standalones. Where I feel like sometimes the movie or the book is like, one's good and one's kind of iffy. But yes, that's the why of it. So Julie Andrews
Interesting.
being cast kind of took
Right.
over that role.
Which makes sense because that was one thing that I was going to talk about in terms of the differences is
Mhm.
the grandmother character in the books is very, very different. She's mean, she's stuck up, she's
Mhm.
snotty. This again kind of gets into differences, but she is actually the one that leaks the story to the press of her being a princess.
Oh, I did not get that far. Oh, snap.
So yes, another little spoiler. So
Oh.
um, I think that it definitely changes
Mhm.
the relationship. And I think, yes, I think they stand separately alone. But like if I had honestly had to choose between book or movie, I would pick movies
Me too.
because I obviously adore Julie Andrews so much and Anne Hathaway as well. But I think why that movie works so well is their chemistry and the
Mhm.
dynamic between Mia and her
Absolutely.
grandmother. And in the books, they're essentially rivals in a way.
Oh.
But I do like that Mia's she gets a little sassy in the books, which I do appreciate.
Yes, yes, very much so. She's more reserved especially at the beginning of the movie, especially in the first movie. So yeah, I
Mhm.
agree with that for sure.
So, yes, the dad is the one that tells Mia in the books that she is a princess because he had testicular cancer, survived it, but
Mm-hmm.
is no longer able to have children. So she is the sole heir to the throne. And initially, they were trying to get her to move to Genovia to train and get ready to be a princess. But Mia didn't want to do that. So they compromise and they do daily princess lessons with her grandmother, and which is where we see a lot of that kind of bickering dynamic. And I'm going to primarily be talking about the plot of the first one, but I will kind of do just a general series overview in a little bit. But this part is very similar where Mia has a crush on Josh, who is dating the head cheerleader, Lana, who always bullies Mia. And when Josh finds out that she's a princess, he breaks up with Lana to take her to what is in the books called the cultural diversity dance. And so asks Mia to go to that. And while they're at the dance, Mia realizes that Josh is only doing that to kind of get this like fame or publicity because he's with the princess. And so she essentially kind of breaks up with him and spends the rest of the dance with Lily and Tina. So those are Mia's best friends in the book. So Lily is obviously in the movies. She has a public radio show the same way that she does in the movies. But a character that does not appear in the movies is Tina Hopkin Baba, and she is the daughter of an oil sheik, and he's worried about her safety, and so he makes her go to school with a bodyguard, and that's
Mm.
when Mia and Tina become friends because Mia's dad makes her bring a bodyguard to school. And so, because Tina has essentially been shunned for having a bodyguard, they sit together at lunch and bond over their bodyguards.
Aw.
And so, throughout the course of the first book, they become really good friends. So, at this dance, they hang out. And kind of throughout this book, Mia starts to realize that she has feelings for Lily's older brother, Michael, who does also appear in the movies, which I'm sure you'll spend some time talking about. And so that's kind of where the first book ends, is her really recognizing that she's got this crush on Michael. And the first book is a pretty fast paced kind of section of time. I feel as though the movies give it a much larger arc over the course of the plot, which I'll let you touch on. But I was surprised going back through the books last summer that I was, oh, we're already done. Feel like we hadn't gotten very far. So,
Yeah.
kind of talking a little bit about the overall plot of the series. So, the first 5 books are the course of Mia's freshman year.
Oh,
So
wow.
it takes us a while to get through one year, which I think is kind of interesting. And I will try to keep this for the most part spoiler free, just in case anyone does want to go through and read the books. Obviously, the first one, it's hard not to spoil because
Yeah.
we're trying to
It's
compare it
such
to
a
the
big thing.
movies.
Yeah.
Mhm. But over the course of the books as a whole, but especially those first 5, she's really tackling relationships, both romantic and friendship. There's a few other guys that come into the picture, and she's having to start going to balls and state dinners, and she does get together with Michael. But starting in book 6, he goes off to college at Columbia, and so she's not, this is a new dynamic. They start getting into conversations of more adult things in their relationship,
Gotcha.
which I think, as a kid was kind of interesting to read about and learn about. But I think I do appreciate for them tackling some of those more adult
Yeah.
topics, I think in a very realistic and careful way for young readers.
Yeah, that was one of my questions is in the books, do Mia, I mean, this would be a spoiler, but I'm just curious, do Mia and Michael stay together? Because movies 1 and 2 go over such a larger period of time that there's like so much that changes, and there's a few things with the actors that have to do with that. But yeah, I was curious
Mhm.
about that if in the books they stay together.
So if people don't want to know, you
Yeah,
can
skip ahead.
jump ahead. We'll put some timestamps in again, but they are kind of off and on throughout the
Mm.
books. So in, let me see, in book 8, that's the start of Mia's junior year, and Michael is going to be going to Japan. So they
Oh.
do break up while he's in Japan. And she kind of at the same time, Lily and Mia have kind of a lot of rockiness in their
Mhm.
friendship. So Mia actually starts dating JP, who Lily had feelings for. So that
Is that the guy with the
definitely,
red head? The red hair? Or no? I can't remember
no,
what that
that,
guy's
so in the movies, he is Jeremiah. He is not in the books.
name. Oh, okay.
He essentially, in the books, that character is called Boris,
Mm,
kind of this like nerdy band geek character that Lily sort of dates in the first one. So I think that was supposed to be the parallel.
gotcha.
But this JP is nowhere in the movies at all. And so in book 10, Mia's dad actually runs for prime minister in Genovia, which I
Whoa.
don't really remember why, because he is a prince. I'm like, can you be a
Yeah.
prime minister? But that was a
Yeah.
whole plot. Well, Mia actually gets proposed to. Well, not like proposed, but she gets like a promise ring. And so she and Michael comes back. So it leaves us
Whoa.
very, we're unsure where things end up between Michael and Mia. I haven't actually read the last 2 books. So, book 11 came out in 2015. And then, actually, last year, a new book came out called Quarantine Princess. And it actually takes place during the COVID pandemic, which we chatted a little bit about this before we started recording. I don't know how I feel about that because this is a character that obviously we grew up with. And I do appreciate talking about real world things in books, but it's just a very weird revisiting this character from my childhood in a very real and hard context that I don't know if I want to read. I do, but I don't, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, especially because, at least for the movies, it started in 2001. So seeing that character, like Genovia doesn't exist, although we all Googled it. You know that you did.
I
Like, where
did
is
it.
Genovia? Yeah. But I feel like having it be so otherworldly in aspects of it, putting it so directly in real world feels maybe a little out of place, even though like either San Francisco or New York are real places. I just think Genovia being so otherworldly feels like an interesting combination. I don't know if
Right.
I would like that, but maybe it like is written to the point where it just makes perfect sense. But in my mind's
Mhm.
eye, I don't know.
Yeah, and for me, I almost kind of wonder, and maybe there's like a really important story that the author wanted to tell, but for me, I want to know why that was the point in modern
Yeah,
times or in global events that she chose to like revisit this character because
yeah.
obviously in the course of so the book 10 I think was written in or published in 2009. And so we obviously had the one
Mm,
in 2015 and then the one in 2023. But obviously a ton has happened in that span of
yeah.
time. So I want to know what made her want to revisit this character in that particular context and setting.
Hmm. And also, I'd be curious, like, is Mia 30 years old now, or is Mia like 24? Like, how far ahead, even though the years in the real world is like 2009, 2015, is that no time in the books, or is that jumping ahead as well?
I think for the most part, she kept very in time with it. So, well, not exactly because It was first published in 2000, which was her freshman year, and then the last one was senior year and graduation, and that was published in 2009. So that was a course of 9 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not sure. Obviously, the one in 2023 happens in 2020, but so I guess that would make Mia 35 if she was 15 in the
Interesting.
first one. So
Oh.
yeah, I do think it would be interesting to see Mia as an adult because even in the
Yeah.
second movie, she's what, like 21.
Hmm. Yeah, she doesn't
So
age much between the first and
movies.
the second. Yeah.
Yeah. So one last little thing I wanted to talk about the books before you talk about the movies, and then again we'll do some compare and contrast. But I found this quote by Meg Cabbot of why she wrote Princess Diaries,
Ooh.
and I thought it was really really interesting, especially so two things. One, I didn't say, and this happens both in the book and the movie, that Mia's mom starts dating her teacher. In the
Mm-hmm.
book, it's her algebra teacher, and in the movie, it's her debate teacher. But that happened to Meg Cabot's mom in real life. She started dating her teacher,
Oh, very Gilmore Girls.
right? And then she also lost her father.
Mm.
So, which is interesting because he's still alive in the books, which I
Interesting.
thought was very interesting. So the quote is, I was inspired to write The Princess Diaries when my mom, after the death of my father, began dating one of my teachers. They later went on to get married, just as Mia's mom does in the book. I have always had a thing for princesses. My parents used to joke that when I was smaller, I did a lot of insisting that my real parents, the king and queen, were going to come get me soon, and that everyone had better start being a lot nicer to me. So I stuck a princess in the book for kicks, and voila, The Princess Diaries was born.
Aw, cute. It's kind of like paying homage to her little self.
Right. And I just thought it was interesting that it seems as though the initial concept was writing a book about a teen whose mom is dating a teacher. And while that is part of it, the princess plot is the much bigger story.
Hmm.
So I thought that was interesting that that's not what it started out with. She just said she stuck the princess part in there, which I thought was very interesting.
That is interesting because, I mean, it's literally called The Princess Diaries. Like, I mean, she
Right.
went with
It's a
that. She
big
started running with
deal.
that too. Yeah, exactly. Oh, that is very, very interesting. I like hearing about the books too. I did not know there was 12. Oh, I don't know if I
Yes.
was ready for that many books. I
Yeah.
thought there was like two because the movies were two. You know what I mean? Which is
Right.
pretty simplistic view of it, but that's what I thought.
Yeah, I definitely want to go back and finish rereading them. The first one I enjoyed a lot more, and I definitely reread that one more as a kid. But I got to the second one last year, and I don't know, I just wasn't connecting with it as much. And I think because I mean they're not long books to get through because of the dire entries, but they are on the thicker ish side,
Yeah.
especially for tween books. And I just felt for the length of the book, not a lot happened.
Mm.
And to be honest, I love Mia so much, but girl has a tendency to whine a lot.
Oh.
And so I was just getting a little frustrated with my girl in that one.
Oh, that's so interesting. I know. I mean, I like that they pull through to the movies certain aspects of that, but in reading the amount of the book that I read and then kind of chatting back and forth with you in our cozy detectives about it right now, I feel like it makes me appreciate the movies even more of like certain changes that they made and the why of it makes a lot of sense to
Mm-hmm.
me. So one of the few well not few, but one of the items that I have a question about is I was watching an interview of Julie Andrews and she was talking about how her and Gary Marshall, who was the director, they were kind of creating the world of Genovia so that Julie could really get into the character. And he asked her, like, what is Genovia known for? And I did not know this. She said lace, which thinking back through all of the set designs, there's a lot of lace around it. And
Mm-hmm.
spoilers for two, but Mia's wedding dress and that is very lace forward. And then
Mm-hmm.
two, she said pears.
Oh, she's the
She,
one who created the pears.
yeah,
That that just makes me love it even more. I
I
Julie
know.
Andrews is just one of those actresses who is just like, not to jinx it, but when we lose her, I think
Oh,
that's going to devastate
same.
so many people. And she just had these very iconic roles. Like I feel with sometimes with actors like that, you may get one very iconic role,
Yep.
but she's had so many. And speaking of which, I was at this author event a couple weeks ago, and he asked the audience, Julie Andrews and Mary Poppins or Julie Andrews and Sound of Music, and we all had to vote, and it was
Oh,
very difficult. So I'm curious which. I think I know what you would vote, but what
yeah.
would you vote?
Mine's an easy vote for it because it was my childhood and it's Sound of Music. It's just
Mm-hmm.
top tier for me. I will like I've rewatched it when I've been sick. I've rewatched it when I've been like all ages. My grandma is very or was very large on that movie, so we watched that every
Mm-hmm.
time I went to her house. So I love Mary Poppins. There is zero hate for Mary Poppins in this household,
Yeah.
but I just Sound of Music is just another level for me. Like there's it's basically that and one or two movies that maybe go that high, and one of them is Singing in the Rain, which has been a case file in the past. So I feel like those two movies. Oh, White Christmas is one of those. Just like the
Mm-hmm.
classic, just beautiful. I just love them. Which one is
Right.
yours? Is yours the Mary Poppins?
No, out
Oh,
of the two, I also went with Sound of Music. I just feel that obviously she's really iconic as Mary Poppins. Like it's very hard
very
to
hard. Yeah.
pick, but I think I just a little overall like the softer side of Maria over
Mm-hmm.
Mary Poppins. Does have like harsherness, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, to her, but out of all of her roles, I have to pick Queen Clarice as my favorite because
Oh,
this movie, like I said, this and Parent Trap, like I would rewatch all the time, and so I would, if I had to pick a role of hers, it would be this one.
I love it. I think that another aspect of her as an actor is she has that ability to take a character that maybe a different actor would come across a little bit harsh, and she can soften them to the point where they're still a very
Yes.
strong character like Mary Poppins or like Clarice, but the likability there, just
Mm-hmm.
her as a person just brings everything to that next level. And it was really sweet because actually, speaking of Mary Poppins, that's a good transition. So stage 2, where Mary Poppins was filmed, is the same sound stage that Princess Diaries was filmed in.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, and they actually named it after Julia Andrews after this movie because
I
I
love that.
know it's so good. It's so that the more I dove into the behind the scenes of Princess Diaries 1 more specifically, but also 2, it just seemed like the most fun the movie that came through the screen and the vibe that you get of that of just everybody loved being there seems to truly be the behind the scenes of it as well. And it was just like really sweet of certain so the film director Gary Marshall, he actually created Happy Days apparently, which I didn't know that until I looked it up, but also Princess Diaries, Runaway Bride, Pretty Woman, Princess Diaries 2, obviously Overboard, Raising Helen, which I also love. But there are actors that he's pulled through a lot of those movies. So the gentleman who is the waiter in the first movie where she
Mm-hmm.
like throws things he catches is also the same waiter as in Pretty Women, which I think is so
Yes.
sweet.
And they say like the same
The same
line.
line. Mm-hmm.
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 It happens all
Also,
the time.
yes, that's what it is. I was like, my brain can't think of it. But the let me look a couple more. There was just also Whitney Houston produced Princess Diaries. Like
I don't think I
the
knew that.
Whitney Houston, which is wild because they were talking about it at the table read. Actually, Mandy Moore was talking about it at the table read about how they weren't sure because there's could be a lot of people like named Whitney Houston, but no, like it was Whitney Houston.
The I love
And
it.
guess what? She also produced the Cheetah Girls. Apparently,
No way.
yeah, I didn't know that.
That's iconic.
I know,
No wonder the
honestly.
music's so good.
Right? Also, a funny little cameo and connect over to Gilmore Girls is Zach is in the background scene of when they're at the beach and Mandy Moore is doing the song on stage with like the girls and all of that. He's dancing and it's so funny. I didn't realize that until a couple years ago when I rewatched it. I was like, oh my word, that's Zach from Gilmore Girls is just in
Ooh,
there dancing. Also, this was Mandy Moore's first movie, which was so sweet. I think it was also Anne Hathaway's, if I'm not mistaken.
yes.
Which,
Hmm.
yeah, she credits Whitney Houston for kind of creating the career that she has because of that. Like I saw that in an
Yeah.
interview, which was so sweet. And the Jeremiah character, he was just like from Minnesota and just came over and they did the movie. It seemed like such a fun, wholesome set. And there is a quote that I have written down from Gary Marshall that said, when you have young people, you've got to run it a little like a camp, and camps have contests. I was like, what a great crossover.
I love it.
Larissa's going to love this because of the crossovers of that. But so in
Yes.
Hall, I know, right? So around Hall, I'm getting too excited. I'm messing up my words. So
You're good.
during Halloween, they had a pumpkin carving contest. And
Love.
I know everybody got to vote on it. Anne Hathaway was a little disappointed because she said that her carving pumpkin skills were not up to par. But the special effects department had a pumpkin that like exploded and like lit on fire. And it was so cool.
Oh
And
my
then,
gosh.
but Anne Hathaway, fear not, she came back with a vengeance during the Thanksgiving parade because she was dressed as Gary's Thanksgiving table. It was so cute. She was just like wearing like a table all around her.
Oh
And
my
she got an
gosh.
award for that. That contest was judged by Julie Andrews, which I just think is
Stop.
hysterical.
That's so iconic.
I know. And they were allowed to invite like friends and family. So basically, it was just one day on set. All friends and family are sitting in bleachers, and then just like the cast and crew are walking all of
Mm.
their. I know. They also did birthday cakes for the cast and crew, which I thought was really
Oh,
sweet. And then for
yeah.
Gary's birthday, which wild and I can't even like imagine, but both Whitney Houston and Julie Andrews sang happy birthday to him.
Oh my gosh. He
I
deserves it.
know.
R.I.P. to Gary Marshall. He had some
I
really good
know.
movies. And
He did.
from from what I've seen, like we kind of talked about this beforehand, but he is one, and maybe there's stories out there, but from what I've seen, he was well beloved even throughout, his whole life. I don't see it, people say, actually, he was kind of a bad
Yeah.
guy. I think he did a really good job too. Like you said, it was Mandy and like first movie. And so I think he kind of was like a grandfather almost. And obviously Julie
Hmm.
Andrews is very grandmotherly in this role, but in I think real life. Um, do you have the bit about his daughter in your notes at all? Do you know
Yes.
about that?
Are you
Okay.
talking for the hiring of Anne
No,
or
Gary Marshall's daughter in the her role in the
ooh, okay.
movies.
Might not have that. Do you want to say that one? Because I have something about his granddaughters and why Anne got
Yeah.
the role.
So, the character Charlotte in the movies, that is actually Gary Marshall's real life daughter.
Oh, I love that. I have a fact about his granddaughters. So one of the reasons that Anne got the part, she believes, is one, she fell off her chair in the interview.
Mhm.
And then two, she also apparently had the most princess hair, according to his
Oh,
granddaughters. So
I
they thought
love
that
that.
I know.
That's
So
so
much
cute.
so. I know. She had so much so like the after of Mia that she had to wear a wig and fake eyebrows for the before of Mia, which
Yeah.
I didn't know. I felt like they actually did that wig pretty well because I don't
Yeah,
see no lace or nothing.
it looks very realistic. And also you talking about where she falls off her chair. You may have this, but in this scene where she falls on the bleachers when they're at the basketball court, Anne actually fell in real life, and so they decided to use that tape because Mia's supposed to be very clumsy.
Yes, and it's crazy too because everybody stayed in character. Like
Hmm.
all three of them were just still in character acting as if they would. So I was like, good on them because
So
that's
iconic.
wild. That
I
is
know.
wild. But a few fun facts about two, and then we can kind of go back and forth about some of the differences and similarities. The Kelly Clarkson Breakaway song was written for that. So that's wild. And it was written also by Avril Lavigne. So that's another random fact about that
Hmm.
song. But Lindsay Lohan has a song in that, I Decide. And also Jesse McCartney has a song, Because You Live. And I feel like the movie did a really good job, which is kind of funny because it kind of does very much so date it in the early 2000s, but I think that's another reason why we love it, because it has a lot of iconic people of the time in it, from everything from the music to the clothing to a big difference but similarity is in the books it's set in New York, but in the book or in the movies it's
Mhm.
set in San Francisco. And I feel like they just showed like the beauty of the city, and it was really well placed in that era in my mind. So having these three like really popular artists at the time have songs in the second movie specifically, I feel like also just really kind of like solidifies it there. And
Yeah.
I did not know this, but Julie Andrews in an interview said that she was the one who slid down on the
Yeah,
mattress.
she did. I've seen the behind the scenes
That's
clip.
wild.
We'll have to share it. But yeah, she did her own stunt. It's a really cool like behind the scenes clip to see. But yeah, they essentially just put her on a mattress and she stands and surfs down, and I don't know. I don't know why that didn't get her an Oscar for that role, but obviously like
Right?
this isn't gonna get nominated for an Oscar, but in my mind, doing your own stunt at that age and that kind
Yeah.
of a stunt,
Yeah. I think
so,
she was
so
69.
amazing.
That
Mhm.
is crazy. And I feel like also the behind the scenes of that scene specifically, because you always think like, oh, that would be so fun to be on that set, but then you don't really know what it would be like. But in all the behind the scenes, it's like all the cast and crew just sliding down that slide in the second movie. And I just feel like that was such a fun looking set to be around. Also, Gary was really good at connecting with the actors about their lines and asking them, do you think this is true to your character to say this line? Or do you feel comfortable in the scene saying this line?
Mhm.
And in a few of the behind the scenes versus the movie, you can see the lines change, and not in a bad way, but just and it I think it felt more natural for either like Julie Andrews or Anne Hathaway to say a different line or say it a different way or react in a different way. And it just really showed the actors in like a great light and the characters to like their truest selves. And oh,
Mhm.
I just honestly can't say enough. Also, I have a really funny thing about Chris Pine. So
Oh,
he's
please. Oh, real fast, do
yeah,
you want it just in case anyone hasn't seen the
mm,
second one, just kind of a general overview
yes,
of the plot?
absolutely. So in the second movie, Mia is now aware, obviously, that she's a princess. She is in Genovia, which they also created that full set because they were going to go on location overseas, but then they decided just to create it in Burbank. So all of that's in Burbank, which is wild, and well done to the set crew and all of that. I also think, if I'm not mistaken, the set designer for Pretty Woman, I believe, came out of retirement to do the second movie's set of Genovia. So it seems like Gary has a very good reputation with people he's worked for or worked with in the
Yeah.
past. But the second movie is around what happens now that Mia is needing to take over the throne. And according to the history and the background of Genovia, she has to be married. So it's basically what happens, what do we do? How do we find somebody for Mia to marry? There's a really cute scene where they're looking through all of the like eligible bachelors, and it's so funny at the time because uh they have William from like Prince, like
Mhm.
actual Prince
The
William.
Prince William,
Yeah, the
yeah.
Prince William in it as an option, and they're like, "Yes," and then it just, like, doesn't work because he has to be his own king, and so they're like, "Oh man. Okay, we'll keep looking."
Yeah.
But so they find somebody for her to marry in kind of an arranged marriage scenario, and so they're walking through the steps in the process of that, but there is another of the aristocrats who has a nephew who, I mean, it's all kind of spoilers at this point, but he wants him to be king, and so the uncle is trying to set up who the actor is Chris Pine, who this was one of his first and biggest roles, and he had like almost nothing in his bank. He's I think he's had like
Right.
$400 in his bank before getting this role,
Wow.
which is wild. But so it's kind of like, okay, well now Mia and Chris start to have more chemistry potentially than the arranged marriage. And what does that look like? And then, big spoiler, is at the end she decides, like, with the backing of Clarice, to just be her own and not get married and like take
Mhm.
me as I am. Like, am I going to be the ruler or not? And they vote, and she gets to be the ruler without getting married. And it's like, yay,
Yeah.
yay. And then we are left with the thought that her and Chris Pine will potentially start dating, but without the pressure of needing to get married, because it was like within a 90-day window or something like that.
I
But
think it
one of
was
the
like 30 days.
30
It
days, I
was
thought it was like
really
really,
short.
oh,
Yeah.
yikes. But it's crazy to me that there's real reasons behind it. So the actor who played Michael in the first movie is actually in a band called the Roonies. And they mentioned this in the second movie of how Michael's just off touring with his band. But that's really what happened, which is why the actor couldn't be in the second movie. It's because he was off touring with his band, the Roonies. Or I think it's just Rooney. But so they have Chris Pine in there. And I thought this was so cute because in the behind the scenes, there's a quote of his that says, Annie's been showing me some techniques. So they seem to have worked out about how he finally has learned how to flirt.
Cute.
I know.
Chris Pine, I know this is kind of like the debate in
Of
pop
the
culture.
Chris's.
I think Chris Pine is my favorite of the Chris's, to be honest.
Ooh, I get that. I think there's like, I've never been able to weigh on that fully with like which Chris is my favorite, because I feel like in all different moments I'm just like, oh, that Chris, ooh, that Chris. But yes, in this, I thought that was so sweet because he is very young as an actor and
Hmm.
just getting into the swing of things. And I do absolutely, in the first Wonder Woman, I love him in that movie. Obviously, I love Gal in that movie. It's just no, that's one of those like another level. I just love Wonder Woman in that. But I feel like they did a really good job in that movie and connecting that to Princess Diaries 1 and 2 of showing the strength and vulnerability of a woman. And that was something that Gary
Hmm.
talked about, is like showing the story of that and how Anne's character Mia really stands on her own and can be a ruler on
Yeah.
her own without having to have these like prerequisites that have just been in history in the past. So that's basically the second movie of it. But
Yeah.
it's so good. I honestly loved all the behind the scenes that I saw. All of the clips were great. And I think if you haven't seen the first and second movie, the second movie is a little bit different for me than the first one. I think just because the first one has that really hard nostalgia connected with it. But there's a lot of really great
Hmm.
moments. The second one, Raven is in the
As
second
Raven,
movie.
like I said at the same time.
She sings with Julie Andrews, which is wild because they were talking about how
Yeah.
on set, like Julie Andrews hadn't sang in a very, 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 very long
Yeah, because
time.
she had that surgery.
And how on set Gary made a joke about how even the like adult men with tattoos were tearing up because just like hearing her sing is just such a a crazy once in a lifetime experience, especially in that time period. So it's
Yeah.
just, it seemed like everything that we had hoped the set was is what it was, which
Yeah.
is really all you can ask for in a movie. So that,
Definitely.
some of the behind the scenes that I saw.
There's also, I now I'm not remembering entirely when it is. I kind of have a vague idea. I'll have to like pause and check. But there's a deleted scene that Gary was actually in the first one. I don't know if you came
Oh,
across that.
no, I didn't see that.
It's coming back to me. So you know how Michael gives her the pizza with the M&Ms on top?
Yeah.
So they actually have a scene earlier in the movie to kind of explain that, where
Mm.
he talks about pizza and M&Ms. And so there's like a kind of, they leave a little bit in just so you understand that, but there's actually a scene with them talking about it more so. And I think they order pizza together, and Gary's like the guy making the pizza and giving it to them, but they
That's
cut
so
that
fun.
out, sadly. Yeah.
Aw, I just, yes, I, in any movie where the extras and the behind the scenes and the added scenes that they had cut out, it, if it's fun and adds to the plot and just makes you love the movie more, that just brings the movie to me to a whole nother level. And so
Yeah.
to me, that's what these movies are, from what I can tell. That's what they are.
So, do you want to dive in a little bit to some of the differences? I know we've talked a little bit about that already. Obviously, the biggest one being that Mia's dad is still alive.
Wild.
But now that I know kind of why they kill him off in the movies, that honestly, that makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
When I talked about the grandmother, another big difference, the in the books, Mia's hair is blonde,
Oh, yes. Yes, obviously she's
which
brunette.
yes, and she talks a lot in the books, like she calls it yellow, and she says her hair is in the shape of a yield sign because it's that like
Oh.
poofy and curly, which I don't know for me, I guess because I've seen the movie so many times, even reading and rereading the books, even though they say a lot that she's blonde, I always picture Mia with brown hair.
Yeah, me too. I
I
think
don't know
also
about you.
absolutely, especially because Anne Hathaway is the one that narrated the books. So listening to it, I'm absolutely picturing her in that part as that
Hmm.
role. So I even forgot that, and I just reread it recently.
Yeah. And then I talked a little bit about Tina
Mm,
in the books, and she's not in the movies, but something that the later books do is kind of poke fun at the movies. And
mm.
so they say, oh, yeah, I had these two movies made about my life. And they say that the reason Tina is not in the movies is because her father would not allow that because he's like, this super protective, you have to have a bodyguard. So he was like, you are not going to be featured in these movies
Oh my
as if they
word.
happen in real life.
That's kind
In the
of clever. I
books.
like that.
Yeah, I like the little meta-ness of it. And then they even say and now this is before a lot of their on and off again stuff, but
Mm.
um, Mia in the book says, oh yeah, Michael and I would never break up because, they do in the second one. She was like, that was just so unrealistic.
Which is interesting because if they're on again, off again, then it's a little more
Well,
realistic.
I think in the books by the time they said that, they hadn't really
Oh,
broken
gotcha.
up for good, not for good, but they hadn't like had their big breakup because like you said, the first movie wasn't that you said 2001, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So that was just a year after the book came out.
That's wild. And the second movie was 2004. So depending on when the following
Hmm.
books came out, it was like right in the
Yeah.
middle there.
Yeah. So there was quite a few books that came out after the second movie. So um yeah, so they hadn't actually gone through their massive breakup in the books yet when she said that, but you're right, it did actually end up happening. So
Yep.
don't be in such denial, Mia. And then the last difference that I wanted to talk about, and I don't know if you have any more, but in the books, her bodyguard is named Lars, and
Yep.
in the movie, it's Joe. And I feel like that's another difference personality wise. I feel in the movies they make
Mm,
Joe very lovable, very
yes.
kind. And not that Lars isn't. I do love Lars a lot, but he is much more of a stereotypical, like burly, tough guy bodyguard. And it just seems with all of the characters in the movies, they just made them a lot softer and a
Mhm.
lot more wholesome.
Yes.
Obviously, with the grandmother, but we see that with Joe's character as well.
Yes. And the subplot of Joe and Clarice, I don't believe was in the book, but was
Mm-mm.
created by the actors on set. They were like, we should have
Love it.
like a subplot of something for us. And so I thought that was another way where the director and the actors really worked together to create these
Mm-hmm.
characters in the movies. Because in the second movie, they are more of a I guess they're still technically the
Yeah, they get
subplot, but
married.
yeah, but
Yeah,
they do raised to the place where at the end of the second movie, instead of Mia getting married, Joe and Clarice get married, and that's just
right.
something where, 1, it wasn't in the books, but then 2, I thought it was fun that the actors created that subplot
Yeah.
for the movies.
Yeah. And I think it just adds, like, again, another layer of their softness as
Mhm.
characters. Because they kind of imply that they used to date, but it didn't work out because of, like, the nature of their responsibilities. But now that Clarice doesn't have to be queen anymore and Mia's stepping into that role, they're able to be together again.
Yes, that one's in the movies. In the book, I'm pretty sure they're separate roles,
Mm-mm.
nothing ever
Yeah,
happened.
nothing like that. But those were the main, and you talked about the location differences
Mm.
as well. Movies, it's Manhattan, and books, it's in San Francisco. I don't know if you wrote down any other differences you wanted to talk about.
Um, I think it's flip-flopped.
What did I say?
I think you said
Yeah, movies is San Francisco, books is
yeah,
Manhattan.
okay. I was like, "Wait, maybe my brain flip-flopped that." But, yeah, I think those
Sorry.
are the main ones that I noticed. I just remember in the book realizing the dad was still alive and being shooketh, and then the softness that we've talked about quite a few times, but I think it's really worth saying that Julie Andrews and that character just have blended so well, and she gives such a softness of a very strong character, whereas the harshness, a little bit more so in the books, is a very large difference between the two.
Yep. And like the way that Mia describes her, she has tattooed eyebrows and she sleeps in her makeup and she's always smoking and drinking a sidecar.
Very different.
And again, she's just like mean and yeah, she's the one who leaks the story to the press. So it's interesting that obviously the movies would not exist without the books, but they're just two very different vibes in a
Mhm.
way.
Mhm. And also, like, getting in a car accident and having the queen slash your grandma be like, "I dub thee a knight now." Like, I can't picture the book grandma at all
No,
doing an event.
absolutely not.
Eating a hot dog? Are
Yeah.
you kidding me? Like, I don't know. Just feels so
Which
different.
also, when you mentioned the how the choosing to set it in San Francisco really worked, I also like because obviously that builds into the scene of them getting in the car accident and sliding
Mhm.
down the hill, which I talked about this in our summer episode of going to San Francisco,
Those
but
hills are wild.
I don't know how they do that, to be honest, because that's
Wild.
all the only thing I could think of was that scene. And I'm like, that would be me, as
Yep.
I already get anxiety driving up a little hill in a parking garage. There's no way I could do it
Yep.
in San Francisco.
No, specifically, the thing that is wild to me the most about that whole city with the driving is the parking. I have to park on a
Hmm.
slope, like pretty aggressive slope, and then not
Absolutely not.
every car around me.
Parallel park
Yeah,
on a
exactly.
slope.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
parallel park on a
No,
slope,
thank you.
not hit everybody. There's no way. Everybody's getting something. I don't know. That's
Right.
just that gives me anxiety about that. So I hadn't been to San Francisco before seeing it, but having been afterwards and thinking back, like absolutely, I would. Especially at Mia's age, nope, I'm not. I barely know how to
Yeah.
drive. I'm hitting everybody. Like there's just no way around that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Love it. So, yeah, that's Princess Diaries. Anything
Yay!
else you want to add before we get into 2%?
I think those were my main things. Honestly, it was just really this was one of the movies that I mean, I've enjoyed looking up the behind the scenes of all of them, but learning as much as I could because some of the older movies looking up, it's a little more tricky to find the behind the scenes. But for this one, there was so much and it seemed like such a fun set to be on. It just made me
Hmm.
happy, even more so to love the movies and to have just certain aspects of my life be so inspired by it because I think the at least the movie Mia and Clarice are just such fun, wonderful characters. Not that the books ones aren't, but the movies is the one that is the special place in my heart
Yeah,
because of the history of that. But
for sure. Yeah, and I actually learned stuff today, like how much the actors influence, from the Pears to the Joe and Clarice romance. So that was really fun.
yay! I'm so glad. So tell us what is your 2% cozy this week?
So mine from this week, I have really in the last like couple of years starting to do more putting on background, not necessarily music, but background ambiance noise from
Mm.
YouTube. Like I'll find an 11-hour video and just have that running all the time.
Oh, I love doing
And there's an account that is my favorite. It is called the Dead of Night Ambience.
that.
And they
Ooh.
do a lot of rainy, stormy night ones to um, chilling in your bathtub
Cafe.
with like the water. Oh yeah, that one too.
Love.
All of it. So, and I think they do a really good job of the animations too on screen.
Mm.
So I also like I'll put it in a tab if I'm on my computer, but if I'm reading and have it on background noise, I'll put it on my TV and it's just a nice added aesthetic in the background with good lighting and all of that, but I also love the visuals that they animate as well.
Ooh, I love that. I love doing that if I have to, like if I'm reading or I'm really focusing on something, just having that makes you feel like you're like in the cafe or you're like,
Hmm.
I like the ones that are like morning in Hoppiton or Hoppiton or however you say that. The
Right.
like fun Lord of the Rings ones or something like that too. I really, really
Hmm.
like.
Yeah, there's a couple. We talked about Animal Crossing a few episodes
Mm,
back, but there's quite a few Animal Crossing
fun.
aesthetic ones because I don't think this is something I really talked about too much when I did that case file, but the soundtrack and the in-game music is very cozy as well.
Ooh.
And not to say what my case file is for next episode, but there is a ambience video for my case file for next week. So we'll talk about that too.
Yes, absolutely. We have to. And I have to look that up now because I love seeing those. But I feel like I just like Google it. Like I didn't know of a specific account to look up. So I'm glad that that's very, very fun.
Yeah. Tell me about your 2%.
I went to a coffee cupping, which
fun.
I know. I really liked it. So what it is you go and you first, like I have a couple photos that we can put in, but I have what they have on the table is coffee beans, and it's basically like well, not to this level, but think sommelier details of things, but coffee. So you're kind of smelling first and then tasting what the fragrances are, the aroma is, the like mouth feel. It felt very like, oh no, I'm not like, just don't look at my paper because you're supposed to like write things down. And I'm like, I'm not going to fail this if you're looking at my paper, but it's not graded. But it was really fun. It was about 2 hours long. And what we did is you first smell the coffee beans of all the different areas and the different fermentation processes that they use. And then they pour water in it. So then you're smelling it with the water, and then you break the crust, and then you're actually break the crust and then you smell it, but then you taste it, and you're like supposed to like slurp it because it kind of similarly with wine, where you like want to slurp it so that your taste buds are kind of covered by it. You do that. And then it was just really fun to learn a lot of the details of things, and like, this is more acidic, or this is from this area. And I don't know. It's a little nerdy, but I really like all of the details of coffee.
That's so cool. Yeah. It's reminding me of bingo card of when Alex and Lorelai go in that coffee tasting, which we can get into this in another episode. I really love Alex.
I did too.
A lot. So much so that I wish like he stayed on longer, because I might like him more than Luke.
Oh, hot take. Yeah. I honestly wish they'd given him a lot. Like, okay, I'm just gonna talk about that for a hot second, but I feel like
sorry to open the can of worms.
No, you're right. Like the Jason storyline where he's in so many episodes, like I would not. Yeah, I would not be bothered if they took out some of his and gave it to Alex, because I just feel like the chemistry that they had, and even like that date and all of that, is just very seemingly perfect for Lorelai. So I'd be interested to know more of why XYZ broke down, or why they didn't work, or whatever. Because I felt like he was just like, and bye. It's just like, okay.
Yeah, I want to know if it was like because of the actors' availability.
Yeah,
because obviously, as we know, he went off to have a really successful career with that, and being Bella's dad in Twilight.
Yeah.
But obviously, I don't have enough information to really compare him to Luke. But out of the information we have been given,
they seemed like
I think he could have been a really good contender.
Yeah, absolutely. But yes, I didn't even think about that there. It's just so, I feel like Gilmore Girls is just so ingrained into me. I'm just like, this is my life. Like,
truly.
Yeah. But that was my 2%. It was very fun. It was morning, so it was nice because they also gave us a cup of coffee at the end, and I was like, thank you very much. But
necessary.
And now I know a little bit more about my coffee and the background of things. And there's other classes you can do. If you are one of the cozy detectives and are wanting to do this, we basically Googled like a coffee cupping class. There's also classes you can take typically in different areas from smaller local coffee shops. Like ours was a local coffee shop that was hosted within a boutique hotel. So that was really fun. It was kind of a little combo of that. Cool. But looking that up, or a coffee making class, is probably another good way to figure that out for like a pour over or a V60 or something like that.
Nice.
Yeah. You can find us on Instagram at Blanket Fort Files Pod, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. We'd appreciate your feedback, so leave us a review. It really helps us out a lot. And please join us next week in the Blanket Fort, where we'll discuss a little meta and talk about our coziness of our favorite detectives.
I'm so excited. It's going to be detectives talking about detectives.
So true. It's
going to be a really good
podcast.
And yay.